as much as I understand people have a concept of death and it's ending, it's for me, I see energy doesn't die, it transforms. And so, like you
Mhm.
said, the essence and the energy is still alive if you're willing to engage to keep that fire and that flame burning. And as you said,
100%.
he has been transformative of living in the passion and the work that you do and how you show up in the different opportunities and the different possibilities that go on. And I want to honor and thank him for that, to continuously keep you engaged, to continuously give you the messages through different people to continue on the path, even when it's been challenging. Because as you said, you're a solo parent. And as you said, working in in an institute that is, as a woman of a Caribbean heritage, wall upon wall, hurdle upon hurdle, and meanwhile you have a cub on your hip and you're just smashing it.
But you know what, Natalie? I think, we all come from these backgrounds where people did a lot with a quarter of what we have now. And the minuscule amounts that they had generationally over time has resulted in what I'm able to do now. So I kind of feel like, wow, what can I do with all that generational memory? And how can I unleash that on the kinds of opportunities and spaces that I go very, very authentically, right? It. I think about my parents when they finished school, they moved back to the Caribbean at a time when decolonization was full swing. So, like, the whole structure of the way things were done was changing. They left one minute where everything was owned by the British, and then they came back and everything was changing. Whole governments were changing, and so on. I've not had to experience that kind of uncertainty. The types of things that have been challenging to me have been on like a personal, individual kind of level. And so when you're in these sorts of roles that I have where the decisions that you make are impacting thousands of people, like um, how governments changing impacts thousands of people. I think a lot about our communities and what people had to go through, and use that to hold myself to like an ethical standard, right? Um, Seeing what disruptions can do and how pushing past my own personal struggle is different from like a destabilized economy, a destabilized government system, and so on. So I think when I get into some of these spaces, it's like I cannot let my challenge be the thing that destabilizes other people's educational opportunity. And by having um, mentors and other people around who, I had a boss who had to leave her institution. She was way back when she was having a baby, and you are not allowed to be a college student and have a baby. So she had to leave her school, um, unnamed, very famous university, to go to another um, unnamed, famous university across the country because they would let her in. Um, it was when I said to her that I did not think I could do this job because of my personal challenges. She basically like, no, I'm not taking that. If you are in the same spot that I was in, decades ago, what have I been doing all this time if I can't help a mother be successful in a leadership role? And that was probably one of the best things like the best conversations that ever happened to me, because prior to that, I don't think I was ever somebody who would say, hey, my father passed away. I'm going to need some time off. Never. It happened to be that he passed away around American Thanksgiving. So I just left because there was no school. I don't even know if I wrote my school to say, I'm not coming in because I have a funeral to plan. There, right? I just wasn't that person. I don't think I told anybody that I was having a baby. I just, I was just walking around, right? I just didn't come from a framework where you talk about what's going on in your life in your work context. And here was my boss saying, this is where we're going to change things. We're going to figure out how to make this work. And that was the best thing that could happen to me, because I have reinvested that beautiful support and wisdom and care into a job. I think of that as part of my job. I think of that as part of my job for the students, for my staff, and so on. So I do very much talk about what I'm going through. I have no aftercare for my child right now because of the labor shortage. So I get on the train at 1 o'clock I walk from my school to Penn Station while doing a Zoom, get on the train. After it gets out of the tunnel, I'm back on a Zoom. I walk to her school to pick her up, and then we walk home. Then I'm back on Zoom, and so on, because that's all I've got. And when I talk about this everywhere, be, not because I want people to empathize with me. I don't necessarily care about that. I care that I might have a staff member somewhere that doesn't feel the same empowerment as the dean, but I want that staff member to hear that so that they can say something to the person that supervises them and say, I'm in the same situation as Dara. That's what I want. Because that idea that, especially as women, that we hold these things in, that we're going to serve and help others and not share the true experiences, not for empathy, but rather to put into practice a better organization, a better culture, better communities that really have the perspective of what it takes to do all of this. That's what I want. And again, I hope that these are the kinds of things that where my impact is more than anything. And I tie all of that back to the experiences with grief and loss and how I handled it, how I didn't handle it, and how those things can be used to create openings for others as they're trying to find their way in places where they may not ask.
How do you support your mental health?
So over the years, my mental health practices have been ongoing in a number of ways. So I do lots of things like daily meditations, do a lot of reflective work at the beginning and the end of the day. I tie up mental health into stress relaxation type of work. I used to practice yoga. That's been harder in terms of my schedule. So I'm kind of on and off with those kinds of things. Um, a lot of physical exercise. I talk to people here and there. Um, but I do a lot of reading, a lot of therapeutic reading. Um, what else do I do? One of the best things you can do for mental health is sleep, is to work on your somatic kinds of journey. So I'm very in touch with when I am off of sleep and how that impacts me. Right now, um, actually, I'm staring at them right now, is that when I get off with you, I'm going to exercise because I connect a lot of that with my sleeping, my breathing. After the exercise will be yoga and stretching and things like that. At the moment, I'm not actively in regular kind of therapy, but also not opposed to those kinds of things. So I do a lot in that area and have been for decades. Again, because of the sort of openness in my family around a lot of these kinds of issues. Mental health is a constant conversation and just a fact of life. Oh, brush your teeth, mental health, right? um, and I'm glad that, especially with young people today, you get to see more of that with them.
Yeah, having
They're doing
that.
a better job.
Yeah, to talk about it because it's something that everybody has. Everybody has a brain, everybody has a mind, and it
Hmm.
goes to a different spectrum. So to think that it's only to a
Absolutely.
segregated population, it's like we all wrestle with this thing inside of us. We have a nervous system that's always recording, that always looks for the negative, and it becomes a harsh inner critic when it's activated too. And the simplicity of even understanding that and how it can, turn on us. Some people have no idea. They're just like, oh, this is just the norm. And it's like, no, you can see something other than that. Yet, to
Hmm.
acknowledge what's going on. Um, yeah. Thank you for being such an amazing human being.
Oh,
Thank you. I appreciate you.
that's really kind. Thank you.
You are you're a walking beacon of light. And as much as you gather information, you share it with others. So it's you really are in the process of whatever I intake, I want to share it. And you're sharing the wealth. You're sharing the wealth continuously.
That's beyond kind and generous. Um, I think the best part of me is that I ask questions. And I've always been asking questions from, being that annoying kid in the class saying, why isn't this on the syllabus? Why aren't we doing that? I still ask questions and I approach everything as a question. There's a potential answer. Sometimes we don't know enough to answer the question, or the best answer is this is a possible thing, or this may explain. And I'm intrigued by the fact that with all of the people on this planet and all of the things that we know, there's so much that we don't and we can't ever explain.
Yeah.
And in our one little being, our one little self, our capacity to know is limitless, but our opportunity to get all of that knowledge is limited. And so, how I practice that that is by staying open, open to the fact that chances are likely I'm wrong, but I'm going to do the best that I can based on what I know to have a commitment and a conviction. And this is the path that I'm walking. When I see things that are different and that challenge what I think, I'm open to pivoting. I'm open to change. I'm open to adapting, but not until I see that additional information. And the reason I say this is because I think we have to live in a world where we make decisions, we live out our life, we move forward. But we also have to live in a world where we are amenable, open, adaptable, and welcoming of the diversity of information and possibilities that are out there. And it is awesome that we are alive at a time where there is more democratizing of information, meaning that while it is entirely possible to acquire a ton of knowledge through formal education, that isn't the only place. You still need to have good judgment and good skills to parse out the crap from the good stuff and the reasonable stuff from the completely irrational stuff. But you can get your hands on so much stuff to educate yourself, to broaden your horizons and perspectives, and most important, to continue to smash and demolish the idea that there are limitations in front of what you could possibly know. What you can know in this world is limitless, but the opportunity to acquire all of it is limited. So spend your time wisely. Gain as much knowledge as you can about the things that matter to you, as long as they continue to affirm this idea that we are brilliant beyond what we know. We are absolutely brilliant beyond what we know. And no school should take that from you. No police officer, no judge, no teacher, no anything no parent should take that from you, because there's just enough out there to tell us different. So I hope that what shows up in the world is more of this thing of asking the questions and demonstrating that you have the ability, the intelligence, and the skill, and can learn the discipline of answering them for yourself. Um, and I hope that that's what happens with the people, the students who pass my way. I hope that that's what they get in the experience at my institution that makes it different from institutionalized knowledge.
I have a reflective question for you.
Yes, ma'am.
I'm going to ask you to go back to your 18-year-old self. And you're going to bring this awareness back to your 18-year-old self. And you only have 3 words to tell that 18-year-old self.
There was no plan. There was no plan, but no plan ended up being my signature, because everything like up till now, there's no plan. So it's sort of the words that are coming to my mind are like things like follow the hunches. Follow the hunches. Yeah, I didn't have a plan, and I just followed the hunches. It was like, yeah, I want to apply to this. I think this is for me. I think so. Let me try that. Let me try. Have a good time is in there too, right? Enjoy the laughter. Make more friends. So let me get back to your 3, because I told you I talk a lot, so I don't know how I could
I
get
really
3
like
words out of
follow
it.
the hunches, though. Follow the hunches
Yeah,
is true to you.
it is. And Natalie, one of the things that my career is about right now is hunches. I write programs and get funders who support my hunches. And for the last 5 years, those hunches have paid off in big ways, in that my hunches are about what could I put in place that will help more students to graduate. One of those hunches was in terms of summer classes. So students who might want to catch up on a class or get ahead might not have enough money to pay for an entire summer class because they need to work. So what if you pay a quarter and I pay 3/4? Would you come and take that class? I had a hunch that students who had some money, so if I pay for 3/4 and you pay for a quarter, if our deal is you pass the class and I'll pick up that 3/4 tab, would you go into that deal with me? My hunch was that the students would pass the class. They would show up, register, finish, pass the class. Hundreds of students took that deal, passed classes that are tough, and kept on moving to graduation. I also had a hunch that not everybody who drops out of college is dropping out because they can't do the work. They're dropping out because of the complexity of their lives, and a whole lot of that is going to be financial. So we built a program that uses a predictive analytic tool to find people who look like they're on the path to dropping out, to get in touch with them to see how we could help and try and turn that around. And hundreds of students have remained in college, earned their degrees, and moved on as a result. Very few people leave college because the work is too hard. And I got the opportunity to prove that it doesn't take much. It's actually a couple $1,000 will turn things around for a whole lot of people. So hunches, I like made a whole career out of good guesses. Back then, I don't know that I had the confidence to believe that my hunches were like spot on. They were just sort of like nagging questions or an unsettled feeling and so on. Now I can sit in front of anybody and talk through that with like, I am so confident and I'm willing to fail at this. Like, I am willing to fall down, but we've got to try. We've got to try. And that urgency of doing that. Hunches are a good thing to have. And there's something, I think, supernatural happening there when you're not settled into following this linear path or following the program. You know, the hunch you had about your children and the schooling, right? You didn't necessarily have a complete plan worked out on the better end, but you knew there's something saying this one isn't it. And sometimes people have those hunches and they don't follow it. They'll leave their kid in the school even though feeling that it isn't right. Well, this one is better than the one that I haven't worked out yet. Not sure,
Mhm.
right? We sometimes ignore those hunches, those sensations, that thing that's talking to you. So I would put in there some patience, right? So 18 to 44 is, you know, it's about around like 40, 41 that I started to see, oh, wait a minute, hold on now. Not having a plan and being the right one to be comfortable not having a plan and talking other people through the fact that we don't have a plan, but we'll figure it out and it'll all be fine, right? That creative good things happen from that. I don't, I think patience is something that 18-year-old Dara needed more of. It's okay to walk in the dark. It's okay to feel around and not see everything and wait for what this might turn out to be. I think that I could have been nicer to people who were dealing with things. And so my perspective now on some people around me that were struggling with a lot of things, that I never saw it that way. They weren't hiding things. I didn't see I didn't see them. I didn't see their struggles. And I could have been a better friend. 18 to like 35. No, 18 to like 30, maybe 32. I wish I were better at forgiveness. So if at 18 we had a falling out, that's it. It's nice. Um, and there is no glory in being the person who doesn't know how to forgive. That's nothing to be proud of. And I think that ties into humility as well, and it ties into patience, right? Being a well rounded person is about forgiving self, forgiving others, respecting the fact that the best parts of life and learning is that nothing is perfect. So if you're set on everything being like this, you're missing out on some good stuff. And there are relationships I no longer have for no goddamn reason. No goddamn reason. I think when I last saw you, there was somebody there that I got the opportunity to apologize to, who had done nothing wrong. And that was one of my COVID-19 highlights, that I got a chance to apologize to. And so there's somebody attached to that that I also got a chance to apologize to the previous year. That was long overdue. And so 18-year-old self, forgiveness, humility, patience.
I just have two things to say.
Yeah.
You have embodied the things that you've had difficulty to do. Asking for help, as you mentioned, was not your forte to do. And you have become that in your profession, to give people the ability that you understand how difficult it is to access this, that you created the bridge for it, to not be engaged, that people should know better and they need to ask. You also recognize how difficult it is. So let's catch it before, so that we can be encouraging for it. So you have embodied what you find difficult to do, that you've become it for others.
I've been well cared for in my life. I've had just such good fortune to be well cared for in all dimensions and supported, and had access to an absurd amount of resources and opportunities and so on. And to get support when you don't ask for it is such a, a wonderful feeling, right? It's such a wonderful feeling. And I think that those who ask tend to be those who are higher on this sort of resilience spectrum, right? Like, I need, if you can say, I need help, you are definitely on a plane to survival, right? And what especially when you're in the classroom as a teacher, as I was, the kid raising their hand to say they need help with something is not the same as the one who needs help and never raised their hand. And I want to level that playing field, right? And if we really care about each other, if we really care about our neighbors, it is about building a structure where there is support and help available and outreach, regardless of whether you put yourself in that line or not. Some people can't do it. Some people don't know how to do it. Some people don't know where to go. Sometimes it's not in the same language people speak. Sometimes it's not in the right hours of the day. Sometimes people are so busy, they don't have time to make space for a need that's going to arise for themselves 6 years from now. But if I know that because I've studied this, if I know better, if I know you're going to need this kind of care 6 years from now, how valuable is it for me to have that knowledge and wait 6 years? Imagine what happens if I do it now, because I'm in the position to, I have the authority, I have the attention, I have the resources and space to do it right now. I'm the fool if I wait 6 years from now for you to be ready. So let me just do it now. And I think, um, going back to my dad, that is another kind of thing that I got out of that experience with um, terminal illness and so on, is you can wake up one day and here you don't have very many days ahead. So I'm going to do things now because I really don't know about tomorrow. I really just don't. And I know sometimes people say that, but when you've gone through the experience of like a terminal illness and um, crushing loss, and you witness things like 9/11, and God, we survived COVID. You live in a country where a school shooting is coming tomorrow, or there are other kinds of just difficult things. I don't know what is happening tomorrow. But right now, I have position, power, access, authority, and a vision for a more equitable world. So let me just try and do this before all of that is gone. I benefited from somebody somewhere doing things like that, and I want to put that back out, but with a different kind of person in mind. I want to level that field. And if access to resources makes a difference, which it truly does. I mean, it really just does, on every aspect of things. Let's fix that first before we determine who is the best candidate. Because we're not looking at the best candidate if there's so much great talent that's lost every day because of inequality. So I'm proud of that and I'm happy about that. But um, it most of all is this sort of tie to your authentic self, taking in all of the experiences that you've had and really leveraging the best of where you come from and what you've learned to broaden um, who is served in the world today.
You mentioned in the grief that you had guilt. You mentioned a
Mm-hmm.
lot on your father's perspective. Was any of that guilt a pain of not being able to say goodbye?
Yeah, I mean, in the mythology of what happens when people are transitioning, we all have this sense that people aren't supposed to be alone. Turns out that's actually not true. And when you talk to hospice nurses and so on, they tell you that's actually not the case. Some people prefer to be alone. But in that mythology of like, oh, you're supposed to all be huddled around and holding hands and doing these kinds of things, you think that that's the way, that's what you want for your loved one, that's the way they want it, and so on and so forth. But most of all, I felt, I had a hunch that he wasn't going to be there when if I waited for that flight, and I didn't act on that. I didn't act on it. I didn't act on it. And yes, 100%, my dad would have wanted me to be at that presentation and go and have some fun. I am so confident about that. But that's not what I felt. What I felt was I should try to go. So by comparison, when my grandfather passed away 2 years ago, um, I was actually already coming to Canada for a funeral. A very good friend of mine um, died from cancer, and his funeral was that Saturday in Montreal. And I had a flight um, to Ottawa on for the Thursday. I was going to come to Ottawa and then drive to Montreal the Saturday and leave out of Montreal. And my mom said that, my grandfather's probably going to pass in the next couple of days. So that Tuesday, I got on the phone with the airline to try and get a new flight. and changed the flight to Wednesday. They had a flight Tuesday night, um, got it for Wednesday morning, landing in Montreal, got a car, drove to Ottawa. And all the while, I'd said to my daughter, listen, we might not make it, but my experience with when my father died is that there's something for me. This isn't for everybody, but for me, there's something that matters about trying. So we might not get there to say goodbye, but I would like to try. And she was all in on that. She was like 8 at the time. She was all in on that. And we didn't make it. We were he had just left when we got there. And that was a difficult experience for my daughter. We just walked into the room as he'd left. Um, but I don't think about things like if the car rental company had been on time like they said, if I didn't hit that traffic light, if I didn't, I don't think about anything like that. Um, and nor does she. But we spend a lot of time talking about how glad we were that we tried. We were the ones to go get my grandmother. They had been married for 75 years or so. So we went over to pick her up, to take her to the hospital, and to call my mom and my brother, and so on and so forth. And I don't regret for a second that I was there at that exact moment, right? Um, that's I regret not following that then. I don't know if I would have made it, but that feeling like I didn't do something that I wanted to do, it means something to me. So it manifested as guilt on the surface. But as I said earlier, when you dig into that and realize that there's nothing really guilty about, what else is it? What is it? And for me, having that feeling in my gut that I need to do something or this is the right thing for me to do, if I don't answer to that, the impact of it is devastating for me.
Mhm.
So I just don't live like that anymore, at all for anything. So if I feel like I need to tell you something and I don't make that call, I won't be able to rest easy about that, right? Um, and it's amazing the kind of clarity you get from things and the way it shapes your life. So I don't have any issues with failing. I do have a big issue with not trying.
Makes sense. Makes total sense. Yeah, I wanted to open that up for the listeners because in there you were speaking about what's your father. Yet for
Mhm.
me, I understood it was your intuition that was signaling. And at a lot of times we put other people before our own emotional needs and what it is that we would have wanted. And understand that when we don't listen to our intuition, yeah, that backfires on you. And it's like, why did you not listen to me? And it's an
Right.
energy that kind of eats at you and it's an imploding one that I've experienced. And so it's like when that comes, it's like, oh, I got to listen. I got to listen because it's what I'm going to have to experience afterwards rather than what the action
Absolutely.
would have been.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that I think is also a really great way of um supporting the sort of holistic sense of health and wellness, right? So to be off kilter at your own hands is different from experiencing something. Um, experiencing grief is, it's inevitable and it's hard and it's difficult and we get through it. But adding to it by doing something that you felt you should have done. And believe me, as I told you, my mom gave me sage advice and she was not wrong. And that presentation benefited me in a number of ways, and seeing my friend that benefited in a number of ways, and so on. But it still wasn't the same as what I felt I should do. And sometimes it's okay to learn that the advice and the insights that other people give you is great, and it's the best advice from their perspective. It doesn't mean that it's the advice you should follow. And that's okay too.
Thanks for that. Thank you for being on the podcast. Thank you for allowing us to get into an intimate conversation and sharing yourself. I appreciate you. And like I said, you are an amazing human being, and I'm honored to know you. So thank you, Dara.
Thank you so much for having me.
Remember to be kind and gentle with yourself. Thank you for making it to the end. I appreciate you and your time. If you found any value in this conversation, I ask you to help us grow by subscribing to the Liftoneself podcast, and more, sharing it out to others. The more that we have conversation and dialogue that are honest and open, that is when we can remove the stigmas around mental health. Until next time, remember, be kind and gentle with yourself. You matter.